and welcome to Cliff Kuehl's Notes, where we explore the nature of money, the markets, the economy, and our financial system, where we help you understand sound money and its relation to economic freedom and prosperity. We also discuss global events, financial news, and the evolving financial crisis. My name is Shruti Shakar. So the topic of discussion today is Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and I have Chris Horlacher here, who is a business consultant for many multi-million-dollar startups and projects. He's also a chartered accountant. So in discussion of Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies, what role do you see it playing in our current financial system?
Well, right now, very little, but the potential to drastically change the way the global financial system works is there. What I see it as is a new settlement system for both domestic and international settlements. And unfortunately, the big banks haven't seemed to figure this out yet. And they're of course paying through the nose to other settlement mechanisms that are out there that are all based on a centralized system. Whereas Bitcoin is a decentralized, trustless system that will allow banks to settle with each other instantaneously at little to no cost. And that represents a quantum leap forward in banking technology that I feel that the industry has yet to really recognize. But that is slowly happening as we see more retail companies and all other consumer-facing companies starting to adopt it, because they realize that if need be, they can actually circumvent the banks for doing their own international settlements. So eventually, I think as the Bitcoin system expands and user adoption increases, banks are going to start taking it under their wing as well, as a matter of surviving in this new age of digital technology that we're in.
With that being said, what sort of factors make Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies appealing or advantageous to users and consumers out there in our current financial system of payment methods?
So Bitcoin represents a kind of technology that we've never seen before. And this is really game-changing, because what Satoshi Nakamoto was able to achieve was introduce scarcity into the world of digital goods. And this is something that people are still trying to wrap their head around. And he did it in a decentralized peer-to-peer system that doesn't require any server or any central authority to determine how much money is in the system and what accounts that money is in. So this drastically changes the game in terms of financial services and how payments are going to be made. We have new opportunities in terms of financial services, and it really empowers the individual right down to the man on the street to be able to bank and do payment transfers in an absolutely near 100% efficient manner. Particularly with things like international remittances, the fees are absolutely just completely out of this world in terms of somebody who is here working in Canada sending money back home to their relatives in the Caribbean or Africa or some other country, particularly if the financial system of that country is not particularly sophisticated. So we have companies like Western Union who have previously dominated this industry. But now Bitcoin comes in and has completely undercut them in a way that is almost like the mechanized loom taking away the business from artisan textile weavers. So I don't think we're going to see the rise of new financial Luddites, but it really represents a huge opportunity for the financial services community to hop on board and learn to use this system and incorporate it into the existing financial infrastructure, because it's really going to allow them in turn to offer better services and be more competitive. And the companies that are able to bring this in and integrate it into their services are the ones that are going to survive well into the 21st century.
And what would you say are some limitations that or drawbacks that make it not as advantageous or appealing?
Well, as a currency, Bitcoin is fine. I know there's some people out there that complain that it's a deflationary currency, but that's actually a good thing. You don't want an inflationary currency. You want something that is going to be relatively stable over time. For thousands of years, we used gold for that because the supply of gold was relatively fixed from one year to the next, to the next, to the next, and you can't counterfeit gold. Bitcoin models that same behavior. There's only going to ever be so many new Bitcoins issued each year, slowly reaching a cap of 21 million Bitcoins, I think, in the year 2150 or somewhere around that point in time. So the supply of Bitcoins is very predictable over time. And that in turn allows us to do more accurate economic calculations. So businesses that are using Bitcoin, once the value itself stabilizes, which will happen over time as more users adopt and the velocity of exchanges increases, we'll start to see a much more stable system. And businesses that are running on Bitcoin will actually be able to forecast better, because now inflation is a wild card that they don't necessarily have to really worry about, because we know exactly how many Bitcoins there are and how many there will be tomorrow and the day after and 10 years from now and 50 years from now.
So you had mentioned how back in the day we did gold, we used gold as trading, and there was a finite amount of production that is created, and similar concept goes for Bitcoin. What would be your opinion and thoughts towards marrying the concept of Bitcoin with trading and commodity banking? Would that be something that could happen in the future? If so, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's possible to do that, but now you're introducing a new factor of centralization back into the system of Bitcoin, because now there's going to be a central authority that's charged with holding the gold and making sure that there's the right amount of gold there to back the amount of cryptocurrency units that the institution has issued. I don't know if that will be particularly successful, but there are other asset classes that this could work very well for. For example, land title. A crypto land title system would be extremely efficient and very easy to operate. And so real estate brokers would be able to hop on this system and parcel out the land and attach a cryptocurrency unit to that parcel of land, and then it can be traded back and forth between different landowners, and the brokers are just updating the registry as they go. Another possible use of it would be things like any kind of legal document. There's things like marriage licenses. So there's a new system coming out called iNation. iNation is going to allow people to, it's essentially a legal document storage system, which creates unforgeable documents, and they can be used for marriage certificates, birth certificates, death certificates, titles, contracts, you name it, whatever it happens to be. So the applications of blockchain technology are not necessarily limited to only currencies. Anywhere where you want a digital, unforgeable document, this is where this technology can be applied, and we're only just seeing the beginnings of what we can use blockchain technology for.
So Ms. Shedlock recently observed that there might be a looming financial crisis that might happen in the near future because of the unwarranted QE. What are your thoughts and opinions towards that? If you do think that there might be a crisis, what might be the time frame for something like this to happen?
It is definitely happening, and I would agree with Mish about this. There's also, the Currency War book by Jim Rickards, so this is a fairly popular concept right now. Although I don't necessarily think it's a war as more of a suicide, because the central banks around the world are cooperating with one another in sort of an unannounced agreement to maintain some sort of fixed exchange rates in the global currency markets. This is a very bad thing, because the US debt is out of control. Same thing with most of the European countries. So I think we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years a currency crisis throughout most of the Western world, which will really jeopardize the position of the euro and the US dollar in the global financial markets. Now, other players that are involved in the war, and this is where it actually does become a war, is Eastern countries like Russia and China, who are now emerging economic superpowers, and they see the weakness in the Western economy, and they're making moves right now as we speak to secure their domination in the global economy for the next 100 years.
Now, if such a crisis were to happen, you had mentioned it might be in 10 years' time if this crisis could evolve. Would you then consider maybe that governments might reform to use IMF currencies such as SDRs as a form of fiat currency?
It's a possibility, Although the IMF SDR, which is essentially a call on other nations' currencies, it historically has not really been backed by gold, and the IMF has been selling its gold. It sold 400 tons, I think, a couple of years ago to India or China, and other countries are making purchases of gold from the IMF. So it doesn't seem like the SDR is going to be a long-term solution. And by and large, the IMF is dominated by Western interests. So particularly South America's experience with the IMF has not been positive. They are not fans of the IMF. And China, Russia, of course, and India are also not likely to want to go that way. And with all of the gold purchases being made by China, India, Russia, and like the BRIC countries, it seems to be that they're beginning to make the shift away from a US dollar standard back to some sort of international gold standard. And I think that is sort of the direction that those countries are headed. So, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell the future precisely, but it seems to be that this is the kind of plays that these countries are making.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, from the research that I've done, I can somehow see that Bitcoin's theoretical framework goes in terms with the Austrian School of Economics. But before we talk about that, would you like to expand on sound money and its prevalence in our society, or its role that it plays in our society, whether it's a libertarian, free trade, or Austrian School of Economics and thought?
For the moment, we don't have sound money, and that's the problem, and we're seeing the effects of that more and more each day. But a sound monetary system is absolutely critical for an economy to operate. It's literally the lifeblood of an economy, and without a sound standard of value, it's impossible to perform something called economic calculation. And this gives rise to the business cycle, and in Austrian business cycle theory, an unstable currency leads to changes in the interest rate which are not natural. And when a central bank intervenes to increase the monetary supply, interest rates go down, borrowing increases beyond what it otherwise would be, and businesses are spending money on projects that ultimately they would not if we had a natural interest rate, which would be higher. The reason why is because businesses, when they calculate what projects they want to undergo, they use something called discounted present value or net present value. And at lower interest rates, projects look more profitable than they otherwise would be. And in some cases, an unprofitable project would look profitable if the interest rates are low enough. And this is what we see happening in the real estate boom. Now, going back to Bitcoin and Austrian economics, it is a product of that kind of philosophy. So Satoshi Nakamoto embedded a newspaper article in block 0, the very first block that was ever created from Bitcoin. And that newspaper article was a link to an announcement by the British Central Bank that they were beginning quantitative easing.
Oh, that's interesting. And now finally, I was wondering if maybe you could tell our readers and viewers where we could find more information about what you do and how you're connected with the Mises Institute of Canada, as well as on the advisory board for the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada.
Well, I am the vice chairman of the Mises Institute of Canada. We're a registered charity, and we are dedicated to teaching Austrian economics to the Canadian public. We run 2 major events through the year. We've got Rothbard University this summer, and we have the International Conference of Prices and Markets in the fall. We have our website at mises.ca that they can visit. And I also do some work with the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada, which is an association of businesses and developers who have really dedicated themselves to making sure that this technology really reaches the masses in the way that it needs to.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and being here and talking to us about Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies. I sincerely appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.